presentation, quite frankly. It's just quite extraordinary. We have very, very talented young lady here today who will really open your eyes to the technology world around you and will do some things that I think are quite extraordinary, things to really put into action and improve the results of your organization. So I guess we should just go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
As Tom said, my name is Tina Arnoldi. I'm with Coastal Community Foundation, and I have 2 business cards for you today. If you have questions after the presentation, feel free to call me, email me. I'm happy to help because I have a ton of information I'm going to fly through before your stomachs start grumbling for lunch. I don't want to ramble on and on. My other business card is for a project called the Palmetto Technology Hub. And what this resource is, it's something totally free, and it's a way of matching technically literate volunteers with nonprofits. So you all have limited budgets, and you probably have limited budgets, especially for any technology needs. So this is a way to try to link you up with a volunteer. So I encourage you to take a look at that site and see if that can be a resource to you. Okay, the plan for today is I'm going to go ahead and go through my presentation, giving you an overview of social media. I'm going to talk about Twitter, blogging, Facebook, and you'll see all these slides are in front of you too if you're having any trouble seeing the screen. And then Lynn's going to talk to you for a few minutes about Click and Pledge, which is a product, a web-based product for nonprofits that you'll definitely be interested in hearing, especially after you hear how these tools work. And then the important part, you're going to get something to eat. And then for those who stay, just networking, if there's other questions. And again, I encourage you, if you don't have a question for me today and next week you think, oh, that's right, I meant to ask her about this, please, again, I really do encourage phone calls. It is the fun part of my job, working on social media. Okay, so social media. Does this overwhelm anyone? Right? When you think about what is social media, Web 2.0, you hear about all these tools. And this is a great slide I love to include because it really is mind-boggling. Sometimes I do this for a living and it makes my head hurt just thinking about all the different tools out there. So we're not covering all this today. I'd have you here all day if we did. Instead, I'm going to talk about a few of the ones that we use at Coastal Community Foundation that I think are great tools for getting started. Okay, social media. So what is it? What are we even talking about? Social media is a way to facilitate communication. It's really about a way for you to talk to your donors, talk to the community. It's a new communication tool. About sharing your information, collaborating, working together. You'll hear the term social networking. For example, Facebook. You have a Facebook profile. That's social networking. Video sharing. I'm sure everyone's heard of YouTube. Right, getting videos online, and it's just, I wish I could talk about some of the videos that have really gone viral. It's incredible what videos can do if they're done right. And wikis, that's another term for collaboration. So you can see how all this can really be somewhat overwhelming in blogs. So that's just some of the highlights. What is social media? Okay, so why would you even bother with this, right? So the thing that I think is important, especially for nonprofits, where we're all on a limited budget, is it is going to be an increase in your time. I'm not going to tell you that it's easy to just see 5 minutes a day, but it's not necessarily an increase in money. So many of these tools are free. You know, blog, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. There's so many free tools, which is why I especially encourage nonprofits to consider using social media as part of their strategy. It's a new way to connect donors. You know, you look at how many people are online. You have an audience out there that you can talk to. It's inviting conversation. There's still value to press releases. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying you should stop doing the press releases. But when you have something like a blog, you're inviting people to talk back to you, to comment, or, you know, same with Twitter, same with these other tools, that it's two-way. It's not just you putting the information out there. And again, you're encouraging people to really talk to you. This question is a big one that I get asked when I do this presentation, is I'm losing control of my message. You can't control what people say about you. Now, maybe for us as a nonprofit, this isn't as big of an issue as it is for a company like Microsoft or Dell, where they really get hit hard online with some of the criticisms that people have to say about the company. So you can't, people are going to say what they want to say. However, you can influence what people are saying, right? So if people are saying negative things, this gives you an opportunity, you have a medium to respond back. And I'll give you an example of this. I had a company where I was having some trouble with customer support. I just absolutely could not get a human being on the phone to help me with my issue. So I put it out on Twitter. I didn't say what I was really thinking. I thought, all right, Tina, this is going public. Let's tone it down. I was very frustrated, and I just said, does anyone know how I can get a hold of, this company? I'm having trouble reaching a live person in support. Probably within 15 minutes, I actually heard back from the company. So then my issue was resolved. So it's kind of interesting that you would think things, normal, traditional communications, trying to get someone on the phone would be the way to go, but this was just an interesting case where I was actually able to resolve my problem with Twitter. And then this one, once you decide on your social media outlet, think about a policy. And that's another concern that people have raised to me, is I'm going to lose control of my message. I don't know what my volunteers are saying, staff are saying, and you just really think strategically about that. If you can fix this by having a policy, or if you have an official nonprofit blog and maybe only give a couple people the rights to do blog posts. So that's something you want to think about before you jump in, about who should be allowed to speak on your behalf. And I'll stop right there. Any questions so far about just the introduction or the message before I keep going? All right, where to begin? Listening. Not just listen to me. Hopefully you are listening to me. But what I mean by this slide is, before you jump in, listen to what's going on in the social media world. Read some blogs. Just kind of poke around on Facebook. I think it's especially useful if you look at the tools, like if you are, if you're a clothing shelter or a food bank or something, look at other organizations that are similar to you and see what they're doing online. That'll help you get some ideas on what might be effective for your organization. And not just necessarily your organization, but just in general, even, in the computer field or just any other kind of industries out there. See what other people are doing, and you can kind of learn from them what's effective and what's not. So, again, before you go home and do any of these tools that I'm talking about today, just make sure you just spend some time surfing the web and see what other people are doing. Okay, Google Alerts. Is anyone here currently using Google Alerts? So maybe a third or so. This, I think, is a great tool for listening. And if you don't do any of the takeaways today, and you're not ready to implement any of these things, this is the one that I definitely suggest that you do. This is just very easy. And you go to, and again, it's on your slide, you go to google.com/alerts. And what this does is, this is a daily search on Google for terms that are of interest to you. So here you would put in your search term, which in my case, I do a search on Coastal Community Foundation, and I would leave these settings. Comprehensive means it's looking at blogs, videos, any mention of Coastal Community Foundation, and then I put in my email address, and I get a daily email of when Coastal Community Foundation is talked about online. And this is just an example of an email. This is an older one, but I keep this one in my slide just because it's a good representation of the kind of information that I would get. So this is just a screenshot of something that came in my email. And you'll see that there was somebody talked about Coastal Community Foundation in a blog. And then you'll see that this was a press release where Coastal Community Foundation was mentioned. So that's an important part of listening, is seeing what people are saying about you. I also have an additional alert I put one for Nonprofit Charleston. So if there's something mentioned about a nonprofit in Charleston, whether it's an event or a position opening or a fundraising event, I get notification that there was something out there on Google about that had the words nonprofit in Charleston in it. So you can play around with this. Think about, again, not just your nonprofit name, but words that are of interest to you. Put a couple of alerts on. And if it gets to be overwhelming, you're just getting bombarded with emails, you'll see these options here, and this will be in your email that you can create, you can remove the alert if it's just junk, it's nothing that you really care about. or manage, maybe you just need to edit the words in it. So does anyone have any questions about Google Alerts? That's definitely the one takeaway if you're not doing. I would recommend getting started with Google Alerts. And then again, that was just showing you it's finding Coastal Community Foundation, the blog, and the web. You know, because on that previous screen I said comprehensive. Look at everything going on online. Twitter. Is anybody here on Twitter? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, when I first heard of Twitter, my impression, and this is going to be on tape now, so I got to try to be careful how I say this. I thought it was a bunch of losers with too much time on their hands. That is honest. That is my impression of what I thought Twitter was about. I thought, who cares about Twitter? I said, why would you even put this kind of information out there? And my perspective obviously has changed since I use it now pretty regularly. But for those of you who aren't familiar with it, this is your Wikipedia definition, and again, that's in your slide. Twitter is considered microblogging, so you're sending out information, you're inviting conversations, but you're doing it in 140 characters. So you can't be wordy. This is where you really get into having to use a lot of abbreviations, and you learn some, like for the word great, that a lot of times on Twitter you'll see that spelled GRT. You know, so you're really sinking down which letters you're even using. And this, I think, is interesting. This was a Pew report done, this latest data, I believe, was in October of 2009, that of the Americans that are online, 19% of them are using Twitter. Now, it may not be real active. Maybe they set up an account and they do it once in a while. I just think it's interesting that it shows how much that use has grown. Yeah, it was October. Okay, this slide, I just love this one because it's kind of, I think it's a good description of Twitter. No, I'm not on Twitter, and I don't want to know when and what you eat at breakfast, right? You think about some of the things that are on Twitter, and you think, I can't believe people are even sharing this information because no one cares. And then this one, my life was so boring until I began to Twitter about it. Those people, I think, you know what, your life is unfortunately still boring. You're just telling everyone exactly how it is, right? So that doesn't change it just because you're putting it out on the internet. So I love putting this slide in. Okay, so talk about why and when. So if you're thinking about social media tools, you think maybe I am ready to implement something in my nonprofit, let's talk about some ways that you might want to use Twitter. Again, I talked about short snippets of information. So some people find this easy, some people find it hard. You know, I have so much I want to say, how can I do it in 140 characters? But I think a benefit of it is that it is just short information. You don't have to think a lot about what you're going to put in there. And some examples of way a nonprofit might use it is, you know, we still have tickets left for our event on Friday night, and then you provide a link to that. Or we just opened a position for a part-time staff, and then maybe there's a link to your website with a description of the position. So you're getting just these little snippets out that you want your supporters in the community to know about. You know, if you have regular updates, you know, you add an organization that there's things happening regularly, you know, that whether it's an exhibit or a need for volunteers, you keep sending out information. Sharing responsibility. There's a couple different ways I've seen nonprofits do it. I've seen people have one nonprofit account and several staff have the passwords to it, so more than one, so it's a shared responsibility, so it's not as much work on one person, or you may want to have an individual account. So it's just something to think about too, if you want just your nonprofit account for multiple people to use. And quick news updates, and I'll show you in a minute. You can see how other nonprofits are using it, and I'll talk about that in a second. And this one, I said the how, why, and when. Just a few minutes, several days a week. You don't have to be there all day, every day. I do see some people on there all day, every day, and I don't think they sleep or have any kind of personal life. I'm really amazed at some of the things that people put out there. And other people that do have a personal life that shouldn't necessarily be sharing that online. So you'll see a lot of interesting things if you start poking around there. So Twitter. So again, you're curious what Twitter's about, but you don't want to go up and sign an account. If you go to twitter.com, this is what the screen is going to look like. And you'll see along the top here, there's an option to search. I prefer to go this way to search.twitter.com, because it lets you put in some more specific information. So for example, in this search, you might just say nonprofit, and you're going to get nonprofit information all over the world. If you use the advanced search, you would have the option to say nonprofit and then the zip code that's of interest to you. So you get results that are a little more targeted. Okay, so this is the advanced search screen. All right, so again, you're not ready for an account. You don't need an account to do this. This is just a public website you can go to and you can look around. And so here's the example I gave. I want to see what's going on with the word nonprofit. And this is a downtown Charleston zip code 29403. And I'm deciding I want to see nonprofit tweets within 15 miles of 29403. Okay, and there's different things here. I won't go into all this today, but you can do different searches, change your miles, take out the zip code, look it up in Spanish. I mean, there's all different features that I'm talking about. Nonprofit 29403. So when I do that search, and this is one I did yesterday, these were my results. So you'll note here that all of these listed tweets do have the word nonprofit in them, and in the green the green below it, you'll see that these were all in Charleston, South Carolina. Okay? So again, I selected nonprofit in my search term, 29403, and then I got a quick look at what people were talking about in Charleston related to nonprofits. Does anyone have any questions about that, how you would do that search? And again, this is just for looking around. I don't want an account, I just want to look around. Okay. All right, and this some of you might find interesting too. This is another way if you want to see what some of the nonprofits, these are nonprofits who have Twitter accounts. It's not every nonprofit. I'm missing some people. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of people on my list. But if you go to this website here, again, there's not an account, it's just a public web address. And you can see this is a list I made up. What happened here is it's number 58. I found 58 local nonprofits who are on Twitter, and I just dumped them all in a list. So if I want an easy way to just look at what nonprofits are talking about in the Charleston area, I can go here and I can see, there's Darkness to Light. That's you, right? Is it
that was my tweet yesterday.
Okay, yeah. The Darkness to Light, the Aquarium, Center for Women, I see them on there quite a bit, and Charleston Park. So that's just kind of interesting, too, if you want to, again, poke around, see what nonprofits are doing with Twitter. Okay, and this is my Twitter account. I have gone over to the dark side, being a Twitter user. And this, I'll just show you briefly what a profile looks like. I won't go in detail. I'll give you a couple pointers about setting up a profile. But I've chosen to use my name, Tina Arnoldi, so this is my account. And you can see up here, this is what my account is about. This gives you an opportunity to put your web address, and I, of course, have Coastal Community Foundation in there. And then my biography, this is what I'm doing. I'm sharing information on nonprofit technology and social media. If you're interested in what I'm eating for breakfast, you're never going to see it on here. I don't use it for that. And then I just try to show, too, that for a computer person, I actually do have a personality. That I'm a reader, jewelry, I love to laugh and make jokes, and then, just some things about who I am. And then what's interesting about the bio, if you do set up a profile, you only have room for one website. But I have a couple websites that I wanted to plug, so what I did is I took an opportunity in my bio to add an additional website. So you see the bottom up here, scpath.org. Well, that's the business card that I handed out to you. That's the matching technology volunteers with nonprofits. So that was an opportunity for me to give a little bit of a plug. And then this is, you follow people and people follow you. And then these are just some of the ways that I use it, just letting, what I like to do is I'll, for example, Center for Women, they had their calendar of what's going on in May, so I wanted to retweet. I wanted to tell my followers about it, and that's what's called retweeting. These couple ones, these are people that had questions. I just kind of search around and see if people have a question that I can answer, so I'll use it to respond to questions. If I see a free webinar, so again, that's something you can look at, see what people are doing with Twitter without needing an account. So just a couple quick things if you do decide that you want to set up a Twitter account. The username, when you set up the account, and again, if you leave here today and you decide you want to set up an account and you need help, call me and we can do some screen sharing. I can help you over the phone. We can get this set up. Your username, you want to keep it short because remember, you have 140 characters. So I just showed you that example where I was sending out a tweet that someone else made. Well, if you have a really long name and someone wants to do what's called that retweet, you're using up your characters. So don't go for a really long name. Try to keep it a little bit shorter. I personally would not use characters such as an underscore. I just think it's easier to remember if it's one big name. You know, for example, if mine was Tina underscore Arnoldi, or, you know, Tina some kind of character Arnoldi, I think that could be a little trickier. I wouldn't use numbers, maybe unless they're meaningful. You know, like fortunately there's not a whole lot of Arnoldis in the world, so I easily was able to get Tina Arnoldi. But if that wasn't available, and if I used a number that was meaningful, whether it's your, I don't know, maybe the date your nonprofit was established. I mean, if you're really having trouble finding a name or your location, you know, if you have SC or Charleston. And then again, I personally like using the first and last name because it's associated with me regardless of where I work or what I'm talking about. So this is my account. And just two things, again, I'm flying through this. Just highlighting things I want to show you if you are setting up an account. Remember I said your bio, you only have 160 characters, so I put things, mine is about what I'm tweeting about, just a couple personal things about me, and I wanted to plug in another website. This option here, protect my tweets, that's so if my account was protected, you would not be able to see what I'm tweeting unless I give you permission. So if you're using your Twitter, so right now, if you all leave here and go home and say twitter.com/TinaArnoldi, you're going to see everything that I'm talking about. If I had protected that, you wouldn't be able to see it. Now, I wouldn't recommend that if you are using your Twitter account as a tool to talk to your supporters and to get community news out. You don't want to protect it. You want everyone under the sun to find it. So that's just something I wanted to point out too, is I wouldn't recommend protecting it if you're using it for work purposes. Okay, before I get into Blogger, are there questions about what I've said about Twitter so far?
You can't have more than one account, right? A personal and a business.
Yes, you can have more than one account. I've seen some people do that too, is you'll have different staff will have their personal account and then do one business account that maybe more than one person might use. Anything? Okay. So let's talk about Blogger. Does anyone here, just to show hands, I'm curious how many people have either a personal or a work blog? So maybe about a third. Okay, a blog is a great tool for, again, inviting conversation. If you're not familiar with a blog, it's basically a type of a website. And again, I've got my Wikipedia definition in here. And it would be, you might talk about an event, you maybe have a great client story that you want to tell, and just anything that you want to talk about. You know, people obviously have their personal ones. I'm talking about a nonprofit one right now. Just anything going on in your organization that you want to get out to your supporters. There's a number of different tools that you can use to host your blog. I'm talking about Blogger today. It is free, and just because I find it to be one of the easiest ones to use. So if you're not a tech person or you've got multiple people that are going to be working on it, this is definitely a great one, I think, for people to use. Okay, so again, for how, the why, and when. Posting, there's no real hard and fast rules about posting. I think, I've seen some people who post every day, and I can't imagine finding the kind of time to do that for me personally. I say maybe twice a month, just so it doesn't get old and stale and you have that people don't forget about you. I would try to aim for a couple times a month. If you have stories to tell, You're going to monitor comments and respond to comments if people are commenting on your post. And I think these last two, again, these aren't rules anywhere. These are just ideals that I like. If you have more than one person to commit, right? So if it's a nonprofit blog and you have a few people that you think are going to be writers, I think that's helpful of keeping the content fresh. And then posting quietly. And this is something that we did, and I recommend a lot of people. If you're thinking, you're talking to your staff, your volunteers, you're thinking, okay, we're ready, it's time for us to start a blog, I want our nonprofit online, but you're not sure if you're going to have enough to tell or if people are going to follow through on writing your articles. The way we did is we set up the blog, we password protected it, and we made sure it wasn't, did the checks box so it wasn't accidentally found in the Google search, so people weren't going to stumble on it. We posted it for a month. We said, let's just see how this works for a month, if people are really going to write, if we really have anything to talk about. And then once we saw, okay, yeah, I think this is going to work for us, then we took off the password so anyone could go to the website and find our blog. We submitted to search results so people could stumble on it. We started talking about it more. And I like doing it that approach too, because then once it was live, people knew that we had a blog and it existed. It already had a month's worth of content on it. So that's just a strategy I suggest to people. If you're just not sure about whether or not to do the blog, if you do it quietly by password protecting it, that gives you time to get a feel for whether or not this is something you're really going to be committed to. Okay, I want to show you, just as an example, I'm showing you two different screenshots on Blogger. Since you are working with a pre-made template, you are going to find different Blogger blogs that look somewhat similar, but you are still going to see some differences. And I'm showing you the Foundations blog, and I'm going to show you my technology blog, just so you can see two Blogger blogs that still look a little bit different, even though they're both on this, using the templates. So this is Coastal Community Foundation's blog, and we've changed it around, played around with all different things for it. What I just want to point out is you can put in these different gadgets. So it's not something, if you're going to go do a blog, that you have to worry about right now. I just want to show you the features that are available. And for example, we put in a little gadget so you can sign up for our newsletter from our blog. And this is the staff that are currently on Twitter. Their most current tweets feed into the blog, so you can see what different staff are talking about. The bottom one you can only see a little bit, but that's our Facebook fan logs. So we put that on there as well. So if people, let's say people haven't come to our website, they don't know we're on Facebook, but they've stumbled on our blog somehow, we're using this as a tool to tell people where else you can find out about us. Hey, did you know we have a newsletter? Hey, we're also, talking to people on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. So these tools can all integrate, so there is a way for people to find you. They may not find your website, they may not have ever heard of you, but if they stumble on you somehow, you're giving them all sorts of other tools for them to be able to get to know about you. And any questions so far about bloggers or blogging? And again, this is something I can help you set up if you're ready to blog away. Okay, this is what I mean with the templates. This is my blog, and this is also in Blogger, but you can see it has a little bit of a different look than the Coastal Community Foundation. So that's why I wouldn't worry too much about using templates, is there's still some different things you can use, and I have the same kind of thing. I've got my gadgets on the right, I'm using a different color, so it's doesn't look too cookie cutter. Okay, so getting started. Now you're thinking, okay, blogging, I think I might want to do this. How can I get started on this? Look around at other blogs first, see what other people are saying, what they're talking about, make sure you comment. This is my little plug for two great ones. That's the Foundation blog, and that's my blog. I couldn't resist, I had to put it in there. So those are the two that we maintain. But even if you just Google, go or blog or search and just see what blogs are there, see what's interesting. Just, again, it's part of that listening before you're doing. Think about the authors. So if you think you're ready to get started, if you have dedicated volunteers or if you have multiple staff that you think will be interested in writing, So it's something you want to start brainstorming so you know if no one else in your organization is interested except for you, you have to decide if you're going to be committed to it and you're going to have the time to do it. And then back again, the practice blogging. I mean, even if you don't, the suggestion I made a little bit earlier is having Blogger and password protecting it. Even just open if you don't want to go that far, maybe even just open a Word document and start doing some stories in there and see how you feel about writing and get feedback from other staff or other volunteers and say, are these kind of stories interesting? Is there a reason that we would want to put that on the blog? So that's just kind of some strategy. Again, instead of running out of here and setting up an account, is to think about whether or not you're ready for it. If you are setting up an account, I will just show you just a couple highlights. If you go to blogger.com, when you pick your web address, it's going to be the name .blogspot.com. So that's a little bit of a long name, and it doesn't really give your brand quite as much. So we have, what I did for Coastal Community Foundation, we bought a web address, bought a domain, which is a domain name, and it's ccfblog.org. And what I did is I took the ccfblog.org, which is much better than a long blogspot name, and then I pointed it to this. And that's something we won't be able to get into today, but I just want to let you know that if you are using Blogger or some kind of tool that has their brand name in, it is possible to use that but still have more of a user-friendly name. You know, so again, the ccfblog.org will point to Blogger.
We bought the domain name through Blogger, but it's a .com address.
Okay.
I didn't know if you could buy .org through Google, or did you have to buy it from like?
I bought it through. I buy my names through oneandone.com. If you're familiar with them, but they're about $8 or so a year. So you could go to oneandone.com or another provider and point that to Google.
Okay.
Yeah. So you don't have to buy it through Google. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so I've thought about the blog. I set up my account. Now what? What do I write about? And these, if you see towards the bottom right here, chrisbrogan.com, he's one of you want to get into social media and understanding blogging and other tools. I would take a look at his website. He definitely knows what he's talking about. So these points came from some of his work. What do I write about? What have I read lately? What's something interesting that I can share with people? And I have on my site, I've done a couple book reviews, some different things I've read about social media or Web 2.0. I've used my blog as an outlook to say, you know, this is what I learned from this book and gave a reference to it. So it could be a book you read or just an article you read, so just to build on something that you've learned about elsewhere. Who do I admire? You know, maybe it can be about a person. You can talk about a person whose traits that you admire or who's done good work or somebody who's maybe doing a lot in your field. You can highlight a dedicated volunteer. Just, you know, so just some different questions you can ask yourself. And what's going to inspire my audience to contact me? So what can I say that is going to make the readers care about my organization or want to get involved or want to come to an event? So try to put yourself into the mind of your readers and see what's interesting to them. So again, just some brainstorming questions when you're getting ready to write. And then finally, what do I want to know that I can ask my community? It can be a little hard to get comments on your blog, but it's just, you can still try a way to get some reader feedback in your comments. Just, you know, put a post on talk about stuff, even if it's a little controversial. That's when you're going to get some comments. If you talk about something people don't necessarily agree with. Any other questions about Blogger before I go to Facebook next? Okay. I'm curious, for personal use, how many people use Facebook for personal use? So most. How many people use Facebook for your nonprofit? Quite a few too. Okay. I don't spend too much time on Facebook, but as you know, Facebook, social networking tool. There's obviously a lot of people on there. It's the second most trafficked site in the world right now. And this, I just checked my statistics again yesterday, so I'm curious to see if that's still the case. But it's just really amazing how much Facebook has exploded. For those of you who are not on it, I'll just tell you very quickly, it's the way you set up a profile, you put information about yourself, you might want to share pictures, you give little updates, you know, what I ate for breakfast, your status updates or whatever that you, and then you connect with friends online. So it's about connecting with people online. And again, the why and how. I'm not talking about personal use, but why and how would you want to get on Facebook for your nonprofit? If you already have a Facebook guru on there, it's very easy that someone could create a page or a group. You know, if someone's already committed to it, that might be a good time to get a Facebook presence for your nonprofit. If you're already blogging or tweeting, you can tie that into your Facebook page. If you look at our Facebook page, you'll see comments on there. George Stevens, who's my boss and our CEO, does quite a bit on Twitter, which is kind of funny when I'm backing up, getting off track here, but when I first started talking to him about social media and said, hey, this stuff's kind of cool, I want to get on board with it, can I do this? He had just a deer in the headlights look. He was absolutely terrified. He thought, please leave my office. And now it's the other way around, that he starts with a, hey, let's try this. And I said, no, George, I really want to go home tonight. I have to rein him in a little bit. So for those of you who see him around, you can make fun of him for that. But what happens is when George sends something out on Twitter, I have it set up so it automatically will feed into our Facebook page. So I'm tying in, so again, this is about reaching people through different outlets. So people who say, you know, Twitter's for losers, I don't care what's going on, I'm not going to go on there, but they're Facebook users, we're still getting that audience with George's message. They can see what's going on through Facebook. The same kind of thing with blogging is there's a way, and unfortunately I don't have time today to talk about the technical parts of it, but again, I am offering my help for people who do want to do this, is that our blog posts also feed into Facebook. So for people who are on Facebook or aren't using blogs, this is another way that we're tying all this information together. You know, is your audience on Facebook? You know, your primary donors, prospects, you know, who's on Facebook that you want to talk to? You might want to consider getting on board. Can you spend, Facebook really doesn't have to be time consuming. It's just if you have a page, you're going to want to make sure that you are checking back, because you have Facebook, you have what's called a wall, and other people can write comments on your wall. So if somebody writes on the Coastal Community Foundation wall, we want to make sure that staff are monitoring that and are responding back, or if they have a question, that question gets to the appropriate staff person. So you don't want to put up your Facebook page and then not do anything with it. Again, when you consider Facebook is, again, the second most trafficked site in the world, there can be a lot of prospects on there for you. You know, there are a lot of people on Facebook, and just because you're on Facebook, it doesn't mean the money's going to start rolling in. It's another outlet for you to talk to donors and prospects in the community at a time cost, but not a monetary cost. And the event feature, if you have a fundraiser coming up and it's not an invite-only thing, you want to open it completely to the community, and put it on Facebook. And you could get someone who's bored, who's just kind of surfing online, and they might learn about your event, and that could be another way that you get more people to attend. Any questions here about the town line?
You were talking about people writing on the wall. What if somebody does something that's inappropriate? Do you have any control over that?
You can, the only control you have would be to delete it. And we fortunately have done okay with that. I had one on there that it was just really spammy. There was no reason for it to be on there, and I deleted it. But you know, the only thing is, if somebody saw it, it was up there, you know, for a day. So that's why it's important to go in and monitor too, to see if people are spamming. But so that's only been one case where I've had a little bit of a problem.
You can also report them.
Right.
You can also report that post if you thought it was very inappropriate or whatever.
Right.
Without follow up on it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That you can, if you have inappropriate stuff, that you can report it to Facebook as well. Okay, just to show you this is an older screenshot of our page, but just see our logo. Just saying we invite you to talk to us. Basic contact information. this is when we hired somebody who works out of Beaufort County. We put that information on there as well. So just an example of what our page looks like. And then these notes here on the bottom, remember I said you can integrate your blog with Facebook, as these were actually blog posts that were done, and they were automatically fed into Facebook. So that gives us more content on Facebook because it pulls from our blog. Okay, Facebook. Should you do a page or should you do a group? And I'm using Center for Women as my example for a good group, so Jeanette's sitting back here. Okay, so pages and groups. Couple things you need to think about. Be very careful if you set up a page in Facebook. You cannot change the category. And when you say your category, you have nonprofit, retail, other business, all these different kind of categories. Go through your page very carefully, and because what had happened to us is I went through, I selected nonprofit, all these different things, and then I had to make one change, and then when I was ready to save, it defaulted back to other business. So if you have to make a change, as you're entering your information, just look it over a couple times, because as of now, you can't change your page category in Facebook, and I'm hoping at some point, they're going to change that, because I've seen a lot of people who've had the same kind of problem I have. So you just want to make sure that you're very careful with that. You can have your different widgets, applications, and what I mean kind of by a widget is you saw on the blogger, on the right side of our page, we had our sign up for newsletter and our Twitter feed, and you can do a little more, I think, customization of Facebook pages that I've found. What I like about groups, and I say check out Center for Women, I think they have a good group on Facebook, is I think they're good for the memberships, for people that are sending out information to their friends. I like the invite features better for the groups. And again, use them as an example. So, and there's more to pages and groups, but just what I would say here. So you're at the point, you're on Facebook, you think, I'm ready for a nonprofit presence. Look around, again, and follow by example. Look at pages online, look at groups online. And, Facebook keeps making changes, so look at the features. So, okay, this is what I can do with a group. This is what I can do with a page. And then make a decision from there on what you think will work best for you.
Have you ever used causes?
I have not used causes. I know causes is a way on Facebook to raise money. And I don't remember do you remember what percentage of the fee that they take?
I'm not, it's pretty small, it's standard, it's Network for Good that takes the money.
Okay, so maybe 3% fee.
I think it's 3%.
Yeah, that is an opportunity. Causes is part of Facebook where you can raise money online. I have not seen a lot of success stories with that yet. It seems to be more of like the real big national well-known organizations. So we haven't used that feature. And then again, both whether or not you're on a group or a page, you can still have discussions. You can still do pictures. There's a lot of features available. A warning about privacy. Facebook is very sneaky, and it feels like almost every week I'm reading something about privacy changes in Facebook. So now, just the things that you might want to think about. I use Facebook. Facebook for me is personal. I have so many other work outlets. I've got blogs and Twitter and all this other kind of stuff. But Facebook is for me to see pictures of kids from my friends from high school. So I'm very careful about privacy on there. Not that I'm putting anything bad, I don't want to be found on there. So I've got search features turned off. I don't want people sharing information. It's just for me to check in with friends every once in a while. Now, my boss, George Stevens, his account, we want that all over the place because he's using Facebook as a nonprofit representative. So he's going to be very easy to find. You get on there, be friends with him. He'll be friends back. He'll put a lot of information out about himself. So that's why I encourage people, if you're getting on Facebook, think about if you haven't started yet, do you want to use Facebook for personal? Do you want to use it for work? What kind of information do you want to get out there? And if you're really concerned about your privacy, you want to be careful what's being shared about you, I would definitely try to stay tuned with the news and what's going on with Facebook. And that you just do a Google search Facebook privacy and see what the latest things are, see what they're sharing about you. So that's something, again, I didn't put any how-tos in there because it's probably changed since yesterday and what to check. It's just to make you aware of how much changes are going on with Facebook. Okay, before I sum up, is there any questions about Facebook specifically? Anything else?
You know, doesn't Facebook have a service at a cost for donations or for you know, to buy a product, for example?
Well, the donation piece might be, you might be thinking of the causes application that he
Yeah.
just talked about. Is that, as far as buying, you mean for selling products for
Yeah.
an organization or?
Yeah, right.
I haven't done anything like that. Has anyone else?
Birthright just started with Facebook, and there is a fee of some kind, like 30 cents a head, or
Yeah.
do you use that term? I'm pretty ignorant about that, but our director was trying it out.
Maybe advertising? Like you pay per click, maybe, that's what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's what-
Advertising, right.
But I think it was a maximum of $30 a month. You know, we don't have a lot of money, so it was limited.
Yeah, I'm assuming is that you can do the sponsored ads
Yeah.
on there. I haven't used that.
It's neat just in the way that for the advertising on Facebook, you can say I want to spend $5 a day, and you only pay when someone clicks on your ad,
Exactly.
and it charges you up to that, and then it cuts it off. So
Right.
maybe that's kind of neat.
Yeah, I'm interested in, we've only been doing it for a month or so I'm interested in your feedback about how many inquiries, how much you paid, and, you know, I'd like to learn more about it.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a great recommendation to set your max per day so you don't get a real surprise bill at the end of the month. You know, that you only want to spend so much on advertising, so you don't get a heavy hit. Okay, return on investment. I just have a couple more slides and then we'll eat. The return on investment, this is somewhat subjective too. You have to decide what's important for you, what kinds of things are you looking at. I don't think you're not going to set up an account and then millions of dollars are going to be coming in. What we have found has been great for relationship building. I know myself, and I can speak for George, we've met people that we've actually met through Twitter. You know, the project I mentioned earlier, the Palmetto Technology Hub, I started with someone that I met through Twitter. So had I not been on there, you know, that relationship wouldn't have happened and that project may not have ever been started. So there is value to it. But some of the things that we do look at is we'll look at comments, we'll look at how many followers we have on Twitter or friends on Facebook, because again, George's account is a public account. You want to look at views and Google Analytics. I could do a whole other talk just on Google Analytics, but that's a way for you to monitor how many people are coming to your blog. You can see which posts they're reading, which is helpful for us too. We know which posts people care about. And donations, it is great to know if you are getting money through there. You might want to see if your donations are coming through a social media site, you know, versus in the mail. If you're getting new volunteers, again, we have the one box you saw on our blog where it said for the email subscription for our newsletter, you might be able to collect new email addresses, and that's another way for you to reach people. And then again, ultimately, if you are raising money, that's great. I don't know that the money would necessarily come pouring in, but I think it's nice to have a measure of what's coming in online versus what's coming in paper. All right, now this is great, Tina. I don't have time for any of it. Okay, so let's look at what to do next. Let's summarize. Remember I said at the beginning, the Google alert, that's the easy thing that you can just see what people are talking about for your organization or for words that are of interest to you. I gave the example of Nonprofit Charleston. Listen, you know, if you go to that search.twitter I mentioned earlier, you go to Blogger, look at other blogs, just poke around Facebook, see what people are doing. So that's what I mean by listening. Read the blogs that are of interest, you know, comment if you want to comment, you want to engage with the author, so that's also important. A Facebook account, if you don't have an account, it doesn't hurt to set one up to look around. It doesn't mean that you have to keep it or commit to it. If you find that it's not for you, you can take it down, but if you're ready to go to that next step, you can at least set up the account and start looking around. And again, please call me. This is what I do for a living. So if you have any other questions after you leave here today, please feel free to give me a call or email me, and I'll see what I can do to help out. And I am going to be around for a little while yet during lunch, so if anything comes up then, please don't hesitate to ask. So thank you very much.
You're going to see a